Chapter 2. Garrett's Journey. The wind howled across the barren plains of Valoria, carrying with it the ashes of a kingdom long fallen. Garrett tightened his grip on the reins of his tired steed, his gaze fixed on the horizon, where the sun dipped behind jagged mountains. The once prosperous lands of his homeland were now scarred and empty, a reflection of the broken honor he carried within. For days, Garrett had ridden through the wasteland that was once his charge. The cracked earth bore scars of past wars, with scorched fields stretching as far as the eye could see. Skeletal trees clawed at the sky like the bony fingers of the dead, their leaves long since withered to dust. Occasionally, he passed the remains of what had once been villages, stone chimneys standing like gravestones among crumbled walls, the remnants of simple lives torn apart by conflict. In these ruins, Garrett saw his own failure mirrored back at him. The captain who had failed to protect his kingdom, who had betrayed his own. Valoria, the name still carried weight on his tongue, a word that once stood for honor and glory. Now it was but a whisper among the ruins, a reminder of what was lost. He was drawn from his thoughts by the sound of distant shouting. Cresting a hill, he gazed down into a small valley where one of the few surviving villages clung to life in the shadow of the mountains. Thin trails of smoke rose from a handful of thatched rooftops, signs of cooking fires and meager hearths. It was a small, struggling settlement, barely more than a cluster of homes built from rough-hewn logs and patchwork stone, but the source of the commotion lay at the village's edge. Garrett's eyes narrowed as he spotted a group of marauders, 6 in total, rough-looking men clad in mismatched armor, some with scavenged swords, others with makeshift clubs. They circled 2 villagers, a young man and a woman, who stood protectively in front of a small, rickety cart laden with bundles of dried herbs and meager vegetables. The marauders jeered, and one of them, a lanky man with a missing eye, lunged forward, grabbing the young woman by the wrist and pulling her close. She struggled, eyes wide with fear, but he only laughed. "Come now, lass, don't be so shy. Just a bit of fun," he sneered, his breath reeking of stale ale and rotten teeth. The young man, though visibly trembling, stepped forward, brandishing a wooden pitchfork. "Leave her be," he shouted, his voice wavering. "We have nothing for you." The marauder with the missing eye shoved the woman aside, causing her to stumble, and turned his attention to the young man. "Oh, look, boys, we got a hero here." He gestured mockingly with his own rusted blade, and the others chuckled. "Think you're going to save her with that twig, eh?" The leader of the marauders, a burly man with a cruel grin and a jagged scar running down his face, watched with amusement. "Enough playing around," he growled. "Take what we came for and break the cart. Let him walk home with nothing, and teach the lad some manners." Garrett felt a surge of anger rise within him. His hand instinctively moved toward the hilt of his sword, but he stopped himself, closing his eyes and taking a deep breath. Peace before violence, mercy before wrath, redemption before death. The words of his new oath grounded him, urging him to approach this differently. He guided his steed slowly down the hill, moving out of the cover of trees and into the open. The marauders turned, and their jeering laughter fell silent at the sight of him. Sunlight glinted off his tarnished armor, the once bright steel dulled and scarred from battles past. "Look what we have here, boys," the scar-faced leader called out, his voice dripping with malice. "A knight in shining armor come to save the day. Think you can take us all on, hero?" Garrett dismounted, his boots crunching on the dirt road as he held up his empty hands. "I'm not here to fight," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm here to offer you a choice." The marauders exchanged puzzled glances, then burst into mocking laughter. "A choice," the leader repeated, incredulous. "And what choice would that be, knight?" Garrett stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. "Turn away from this path of violence. Leave these people in peace, and I will see to it that you are not pursued. You have a chance to make something better of yourselves, to find a life away from bloodshed and fear." The marauders' laughter faltered, replaced by a murmur of discontent. The lanky marauder with the missing eye sneered. "We're to believe a few kind words will make us change our ways? It's not about belief," Garrett replied, his voice steady. "It's about choice. Each of you can decide the kind of person you want to be." The leader's face twisted with anger. "And why should we listen to you? We've taken what we want. We don't need your charity." Garrett's expression softened. "Perhaps not charity, but you're still free to choose another path." The leader's rage was unnerving, and he lunged forward with a snarl. Garrett swiftly sidestepped the attack, using the flat of his blade to disarm the man and knock him to the ground. The marauders hesitated, their leader's defeat causing uncertainty among them. Garrett's calm demeanor, in stark contrast to their chaos, seemed to sway some of the marauders. The young man and woman, who had been huddling together, watched with a mixture of awe and relief. As Garrett faced the marauders, their expressions of fear slowly turned to hope. The young man stepped forward, his voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you, sir. We couldn't have held them off." Garrett nodded, though his thoughts were elsewhere. "No thanks are necessary. Just remember, there is always a choice." The villagers, now cautiously approaching Garrett, watched as the marauders, their bravado gone, retreated into the wilderness. Their departure was marked by angry mutterings and defeated glances. The village leader, an elderly woman with a stern but kind face, approached Garrett with a grateful smile. "You've saved us today. We owe you our thanks." Garrett shook his head. "I seek no reward. I just help where I can. And remember, this village and its people are worth fighting for." With nightfall approaching, Garrett found himself at a crossroads. The village, now quieted and safe, faded behind him as he guided his steed toward the paths ahead. The air grew colder, and the once faint smell of smoke now mingled with the crisp scent of approaching rain. The path before him split into three directions, one leading deeper into the shadowy forest, another descending into a stormy valley, and the third, straight ahead, lit by a distant, flickering light. The choice felt almost symbolic, a reflection of the decisions Garrett had to make in his journey toward redemption. As he approached the intersection, a shiver ran down his spine. He noticed a figure in the distance, partially obscured by the encroaching mist, a hint of something beyond the road. The figure seemed to beckon him, though the image was elusive and fleeting. Garrett took a deep breath, his resolve hardening. With one final look back at the village now safe under the darkening sky, he chose the path ahead. The light in the distance seemed to offer a glimmer of hope, and he felt an inexplicable pull toward it. His journey was far from over, and though the road ahead was uncertain, he knew he had to face it with courage and faith. As the first raindrops began to fall, Garrett set forth into the night, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. His path was set, and with each step, he moved closer to his destiny, determined to fulfill his oath and seek the redemption he so desperately sought.